What is up, people? EJ Stewart here, joined by Kendall Stewart, and we are back. Yes, I know it's been a long time since you've seen our faces on New Generation Media, but we are back with a new video. And not only is it just a special video for us returning, it is also a full podcast episode. That is right, the Uncommitted podcast is back. Kendall, it has been a while since we've talked about the high school recruiting landscape. It's been a while since, quite frankly, we've been on New Generation Media. I know we've both been pulled in various different directions for our day-to-day jobs that have not allowed us to be on the YouTube channel as much. But as basketball season picks up, not just with college basketball and the NBA, but also with high school basketball getting underway, it's time to get back into business, and I'm excited to be back on New Generation Media talking today with the 12th episode of the Uncommitted podcast.
Yeah, man. Excited to be back. Obviously, excited to talk about all things in the high school basketball, college basketball recruiting landscape. And like you said, it's been a long time, and a lot can change in a week when it comes to college basketball recruiting. So when you talk about the many months that we've had since our last episode of the Uncommitted, I believe it was like a McDonald's All American announcement show, so roster announcement show. So obviously those guys are now starting their first week of college basketball. Shout out to all the freshmen, but it is also National Signing Day week in college basketball, and we've seen a lot of different commitments. We've seen so a lot of movement, and again, there's been plenty of movement throughout the summer, the AAU season, with some recruiting shifts and things that we thought were happening at one point in March when we, or in wherever, January when we did our last show, till now. But still, man, I'm excited to get to all of it. A lot to cover, so let's get right to it.
Yeah, man, let's get it in, man. So let's start with. Well, right now is really one of the big topics we have, which is kind of the resurgence once again of Penny Hardaway and Kendall's Memphis Tigers. Some big recruitments they landed this week. Mikey Williams and J.J. Taylor, a combo duo. Those guys agreed to commit to Memphis, but that's not just all. Because not only do you have Mikey Williams going to Memphis, but then you also have Ty-Laur Johnson also recruited the point guard from Our Savior Lutheran. He's also a top 60 guy. He's now going to Memphis. So Memphis has now grabbed top 300 recruits in the past month. That's Williams, Taylor, and Johnson leading the pack there. So big week for the Memphis Tigers. Penny Hardaway continues to be a force on the recruiting trail. So, Kendall, I'll ask you. I mean, we've seen Penny recruit at a high level. How confident are you and other Tigers fans that this new crop of top-notch freshmen will finally lead Memphis to that national prominence that Penny had, quite frankly, promised? He expected to compete at a national championship caliber level. The teams that made it to the tournament, but not quite gotten to that step. Here, he's coming in, and he's going to have another really strong recruiting class led by star Mikey Williams. Where's the pulse of Memphis right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, I am the resident Memphis fan on this podcast. For those that did not know, but to pull it back just a little bit. Yeah, it's been it may not feel to a lot of people on the outside like. Because they just came off of the Jalen Duren, Imani Bates season and the Imani Bates recruiting class, so it may not feel like there was this shift in Memphis basketball recruiting. But Penny just spent a whole year where they didn't bring in a high school recruit for this past season. It was all portal. I mean, this recruiting class is playing college basketball right now. Memphis was out of it. They were not in the picture for anybody. They were sort of in the running for Nick Smith. He ended up at Arkansas, and a couple other guys. They tried to get Jordan Walsh. He was also at Arkansas. So they're out of the mix for this year. And so for a long time, they weren't really recruiting many guys in this 2023 class. So this is a seismic shift in strategy back to the we're trying to get the one and done. We're trying to get these top recruits for Penny Hardaway. So it's a big shift for Memphis fans. And honestly, it's a scary one for a lot of reasons. Not because Mikey Williams, who we're seeing now, not because he's not a talented basketball player, not because he doesn't have the potential to be a one and done 5-star guy like many people hope he can be, but there are a lot of similarities to Imani Bates when it comes to Mikey Williams. When you're talking about the social media presence, you're talking about the hype. You're talking about the playing for 2 or 3 different high schools at this point of his career. He's ending his high school career back where it started at San Ysidro High School in San Diego, teaming up with J.J. Taylor, who also was at Donda Academy up until a couple weeks ago, and now has had to find a new location. Ends up playing with Mikey Williams now. But I think there's a real question mark as to, is this the right path? I mean, the Memphis team that they have now, I mean, they won their first game against Vanderbilt, but there's a lot of quiet optimism that, you've got, a point guard in Kendrick Davis, who's a 5th-year guy, one of, if not the best point guards in college basketball, transferred from SMU. There's a feeling that there's almost a sense of relief that there isn't this massive hype. There isn't these 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids running around for this team, and that's a much older team. So it's a little nerve-wracking when you're talking about bringing in, right now I believe they have 5 or 6 commits.
5 commits, all in the last couple of months. All top 300 players. But yeah, it is definitely a shift from what we saw just this past offseason.
And then real quick on J.J. Taylor, I mean, he was a guy that at one point was ranked in the top 5 or 10.
Yeah.
And his ranking, he did not have a good junior year at Donda Academy. Shocking that Donda wasn't a great development space for J.J. Taylor.
Who would have thought that? Don't tell that to Jaylen Brown, though, because apparently Donda's amazing, and the fact that we don't have Donda is now just crazy travesty.
Yeah. It's probably... Yeah, maybe he should go to a basketball practice and see how it's ran. But no. So J.J. Taylor didn't have the best junior year, dropped a little bit in a lot of rankings. But obviously, he's a big wing with scoring ability and a lot of upside. So, and then Ty-Laur Johnson also can't be forgotten as well. New York City point guard. And shout out to Andy Borman, who they had brought in as an assistant coach. To replace Cody Topper. Andy Borman was the director of the New York Rens AAU program for the last however many years, and Ty-Laur Johnson played for the New York Rens.
Yep.
And that's what happens when you hire a guy that was an AAU coach, AAU director on your staff. You're going to have some connections to guys, and yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they continue to, if this is it for Memphis. We expect that they'll be getting Ashton Hardaway, who's Penny Hardaway's son.
Yeah, he's on a recruiting visit as we speak.
Yes,
as we record this podcast episode.
I don't know if it's a recruiting visit or he's just if it's a family gathering, whatever.
Yeah, what do you call when your son goes on a visit to the school that you coach? I don't know.
But he is on campus at Memphis, and he's a 4-star in his own right, and his teammate, who we'll talk about in a little bit, Bronny James, is also being recruited by Memphis. So they're not necessarily done with this class, but then the last thing, and I'll ask you real quick. I mean, should Memphis fans be a little concerned because the guys they've gotten in this class, while it's deep and, it's just by sheer numbers, it's going to be a top 10 class when you get 8 guys or however many guys they're going to wind up with.
Yeah.
But there is no Jalen Duren. I mean, there really is no Imani Bates.
No. Yeah.
There is no James Wiseman. There may not even be a Precious Achua.
Yeah.
And you talked about it. They haven't gone to a Sweet 16 yet. They've only been to one NCAA tournament. I mean, is this fool's gold? Is this a flash in the pan that Penny's jumping himself back into?
Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. I mean, I think to me, not only do you not have that caliber player, it's almost, to me, it's scary on from that standpoint. One, that you don't have that caliber player in terms of the high end talent. In terms of what we thought Bates was, what we know Duran was, what we know Wiseman was. Like I said, even a Precious Achiuwa caliber player, but yet you're still bringing the same celebrity potentially. Like Mikey Williams is just as big. He might be a bigger celebrity than all the guys I just named. As crazy as that sounds.
Bronny,
and then you go to Bronny James potentially too. I think the Penny Hardaway era at Memphis has been very kind of fascinating to watch. There are never dull moments. There have been some triumphs on the basketball court. I think we saw their run to the tournament last year and how they kind of came together as a team after they just looked so dead in the water last year.
Yeah,
but then
who was gone over that run?
Yeah, the biggest guy, the biggest recruit they had, which was Ronnie Bates. But then we've seen the James Wiseman fiasco. I mean, there's been a lot of up and downs. So you're not necessarily getting that high end talent, but you are getting the celebrity, and we haven't necessarily seen Penny Hardaway handle that so great. I mean, I don't think he handled the Bates thing great. I don't think he handled the Wiseman thing great. Like, it seems like whenever he's gotten the kind of guy that looks kind of like the whole recruitment is kind of suspicious. Not suspicious, maybe the wrong word, but
no one else wants him.
It's something off. Not a lot more teams you think will be on a player this talented, and they always seem to land at Memphis. And then you say, okay, well, good for Penny Hardaway. But then they get there, and then there's the issues. They can't get eligible. They don't know if they're eligible. They don't want to play. Then they do want to play. Like, it's very weird. So
what the Mikey Williams, what the white Mikey Williams commitment reminds me of, him as a prospect, not necessarily a player comparison, but just a prospect theoretical comparison. Reminds me of when Lance Stevenson was coming out of Lincoln High School.
I can see that.
And he was another guy who was like a fringe 5-star. Started out his high school career as the number one guy in the world, and slowly but surely, other guys caught up to the physical nature of Lance Stevenson, and he dropped, but he was still a high level.
Still a 5-star. Yeah,
anywhere.
Absolutely. But Cincinnati is the team. Yeah, Cincinnati's the team he goes to. You're just like, really?
Cincinnati was like the best school recruiting him.
Yeah.
And again, Vic Cronin, brought him in, and he ended up being a pretty good college basketball player, good enough to be one and done, good enough to get drafted. After his first season in college basketball, but that is probably the best case scenario for Mikey Williams. Him being, Lance Stevenson. But also Lance Stevenson went to a ready-made, veteran team where he just wanted to be a cop.
Yeah.
They weren't asking Lance Stevenson to be LeBron.
Right.
They weren't asking him to carry him and be James Harden or be what Tyreke Evans was in Memphis. Because that would have been a different story, I believe. So that is the thing, is that is Penny more interested in being a reality show, or is he more interested in building a great basketball team? Because these guys have talent. Obviously, if you get Mikey and Bronny, that'd be the biggest show in college basketball that we've seen, maybe ever. Just in terms of, since maybe like the Fab Five or something like that. In terms of
at the very least, probably since Zion and RJ.
Yeah, Zion and RJ for sure. Because but again, those guys.
But again, it's the talent. Yeah. Like the talent disparity is so large, and it's not a diss to Bronny or Mikey Williams. These are very good players.
These guys are Zion level names combined. Like, you have two of those guys on the same team that may be bigger than Zion individually. It would be one of the craziest things we've ever seen. But then it's scary is that, like you said, the talent, you don't have Zion Williamson. Good thing is they play in the American Conference.
That is
Houston true. Is leaving the American Conference.
Yep. I know you're happy about that. The way you always curse Houston every time y'all play them.
I know, man.
Taking a lot of tough L's to them over the past few years.
Yeah.
Shout out to Kelvin Sampson, though. One of my favorite coaches in college basketball today. One of the best in the business for sure. And we talked to him on the channel as well. So, but yeah, I know you're happy to see them out of the conference. But yeah, that's the tricky thing, and I haven't necessarily seen Penny handle that well, but he definitely seems to be enamored with putting on these celebrity type teams, like, grabbing a Fab Five type of aura to the Memphis program, and I totally understand why they would want to do that, or why he would want to do that. But as we've seen, like, if they don't win, like, those buzzers are going to circle even around him. And you've seen that, obviously, being very close to that Memphis situation, that the buzzers were, when that thing was teetering mid-season last year, I didn't know how that season was going to end in terms of whether he was going to be back or what the situation was going to be. So it's great to be enamored by this, but I hope he has a game plan of how to put this together. Because if you got Johnson, Williams, and then you add Bronny James, that's 3-6-3 guys, 6'2" guys, all talented. How do they play together? How does that work? I think that what I do like is that
guards don't win.
No, they don't win you. They don't win you a lot.
Anthony Edwards, and even those guys don't win. But unless they're that good,
or the kid that was at Iowa State last year who transferred,
Tyrese
Hunter, right? Who I love, But again, he was on a team with a bunch of veteran guys.
With a bunch of fifth-year guys.
It's very tough. So I think it's gonna be something to watch. Go ahead. Yeah, I know you want to ask something.
Is these guys picking Memphis? I mean, I love it, but are you? I mean, as someone who's
they clearly haven't been deterred by all the horror stories I just named, the Bates and
if I were a guard,
Wiseman situation.
If you're Penny, you can say, look, I put James Wiseman in the NBA. I mean, he played 3 games, but he also coached him in high school. I'd be like,
that's
James
fair.
Wiseman in the NBA. Although he poached him from high school as well, so it wasn't like he didn't coach him since he was in 8th grade.
Yeah.
But you can say I put Wiseman in the NBA. I put Precious in the NBA. Both guys playing in the league right now. Wiseman sometimes, and I put Jalen Duren in the NBA. Jalen Duren's playing pretty well.
Yes, he is.
What does that do if I'm Ty-Laur Johnson?
Right.
I mean, I'm not Jalen Duren.
Right.
I'm not James Wiseman or Preston Achua. We just named 2 high-level guards, potentially 3 if we're talking Bronny, and we'll talk about Bronny a little later, that, could be winding up at Memphis. I mean, Imani Bates, the pitch was, I'm going to turn you into a point guard. And that they got rid of that plan after week 1. After they saw him play the position. So, I mean, is that something? I mean, honestly, you just got to point to Kendrick Davis this year and be like, all right, well, now that we have a real point guard, you'll be able to see what this looks like, with me developing Kendrick Davis. But the guys they have, they haven't put any NBA guys at the guard position yet. So that would be the concern.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say, though, I do want to give Penny Hardaway a massive shout-out because, I mean, this is a coup. There's no question about that. I mean, Memphis was not on the radar, really, of, the recruiting world for a whole year. And for him to get back into this game and show how...
teams would dream for this kind of recruiting.
Oh, yeah.
Besides the Dukes and Kentucky.
It's like the only reason why... I hated that this conversation may have sounded so negative. And there's a Memphis fan on here, so it's not like, if anything, you would think this would be a more biased thing. But, because of that, we're kind of informed as to, what the Memphis program is, what it's been, and what it's been under Penny Hardaway. So the reason why I have this caution is just because I'm rooting for Penny, but I've just seen this movie before. And it hasn't ever really worked out that great. So you see the difference they're doing this year, and you see, okay, let's see how that works. And now you go back and say, oh, no, we're going to get just the biggest names we possibly could get, and to get these kind of talented guys, but for some reason guys that don't seem to have any interest from the blue bloods, and nobody really knows why. That does raise an eyebrow. Doesn't necessarily mean anything's there, but sometimes there is. So something
there was
to
a
think
feeling
about.
that did Penny learn from his struggles in his first couple of years, and this recruiting class would tell you maybe he has learned some stuff, but he's not shifting any gears. He's not shifting any strategy. He's going right back to the well. Yeah,
he's going right back to the well. So we'll have to see how this ends up shaking out with the Memphis situation, but it is something to follow. Shout out to Mikey, who we've talked about a bunch on this podcast. Proud of him being able to get commitment to a school.
Who is a good basketball player, man.
He's a very good player.
He's got some ability.
Yeah, he's a very good player. Hopefully, J.J. Taylor, in a new situation, can find his game. And I really like this Tyler Johnson kid. I mean, I'm probably biased being a New Yorker, but you see the New York in his game. You see the New York in his game. You see the gritty. He's tough. He's strong. I mean, they got the makings of a team that can really get up and down and be really fast with the recruits that they have. Taylor's a really good athlete, but you just want to see if they can really kind of focus it into something that can be tangible on the court as a unit. But we got some other major recruiting commitments in the past week or so. So let's get to a few of those. So Chris Beard got a big signing this week. Duncanville, Texas forward Ron Holland signed his letter of intent to join the Longhorns next season. It was the first Texas commitment for the 2023 class, so big one there, getting a top 5, potential top 15 type of player. Meanwhile, Andrej Stojakovic, and if you are familiar with that last name, it's probably because you've been watching old NBA highlights and NBA games, or you grew up in the 90s watching... playing NBA Live, or maybe you're playing 2K today and you're playing with those old Sacramento Kings, because he is the son of NBA All-Star Peja Stojakovic, who since has retired from the NBA, of course. Andrej announced that he will be joining the Stanford Cardinal next year. So, according to 247 Sports, Andrej is the third-ranked player out of the state of California, and that marks the third time in 4 years that Stanford head coach Gerard Hayes has secured a top 25 recruit. Kendall, trivia question on the fly. Who were the last two?
Zaire Williams and Harrison Ingram.
There you go. I didn't even have to continue my...
It's a hard question because I don't know if I watched any of those guys play in college basketball. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to even finish my my read, because I left that as the last thing. But I was like, I think Kendall can get this on the fly. Let's see who he did. But yes, Zaire Williams and Harrison Ingram were the last two top 25 recruits landed. So then now you got Stojakovic also heading to Stanford there. So Kendall, let's talk about these players. What is Texas and Stanford getting out of each of these guys, Holland and Stojakovic?
Ron Holland, I mean, Texas, I mean, first of all, excellent gift for Chris Beard. This is exactly what, I think, this is exactly what Texas, this is exactly what basketball people have said about the Texas job for, a decade.
Yeah.
That, man, Texas they'll never get the best guys out of Texas. I mean, imagine if Texas would have got Julius Randle, and imagine if they would have got the Harrison twins, and imagine if they would have got Tyrese Maxey, I mean, they all ended up in Kentucky. So it's easy to point to the guys that ended up in Kentucky, but, there's a lot, I mean, it's just all these guys for year after year ending up at different places. Well, Ron Holland, if Chris Beard is able to keep the best players from the state of Texas in state and go to Texas, you don't need to go anywhere else to get players if you're Chris Beard. So, I mean, yeah, you're getting a guy who's a 6'8" combo forward, elite athlete, sort of the modern day combo forward with his athleticism and his ability to play in transition. And he's just a ready-made. I mean, he could play college basketball today.
Yeah, I agree.
He's the kind of guy that if he reclassified, he would not look like Imani Bates did. In terms of being overwhelmed by the physicality of college basketball. So yeah, I mean, in Arkansas was really, really hot on Ron Holland. They for a long time looked like they were going to be the destination. So this was quite.
I get the impression that Chris Beard and Musselman will be. This will not be the first time that they'll be head to head for players.
No,
they kind of like the same kind of players.
Yeah, exactly. And they're building a similar kind of program.
Yeah, building similar kind of programs, and in the same regional location. So I get the feeling that they're going to become very good enemies over the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, especially with Beard going into the SEC.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. So yeah. Buckle up. That's going to be, and then Calvary's waiting in the distance. Yeah, that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and yeah, and the thing is that we know Musselman has proven that he is not afraid to, try and get guys out of Texas. I mean,
nope.
Jordan Walsh is from Texas, and I mean, that'll be quite the rivalry. But honestly, the one that's more interesting to me is Stojakovic going to Stanford. Stojakovic is a really, really, really good player. Obviously, he can shoot the basketball. No surprise there, but he's got an advanced. He's just an overall advanced scorer. As you can see in these clips, he can definitely handle the basketball. He can get to the basket. This is very much a surprise. For the longest time, people had assumed Oregon or even Texas was very much involved for Stojakovic as well. Stanford was on. They were that team that was on the list, but nobody actually believed he'd actually go there.
Yeah, that was really surprising to me too. I mean, I know UCLA was in there at some point as well.
Yeah, UCLA was the fourth team. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what is the deal with Hayes? Like,
I was going to ask you. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because and I don't mean that disrespectfully to him, of course, but he was a coach at UAB. Now he's been at Stanford for a while. They've made no indents in the Big Pac-12. I mean, I forgot he was there, to be quite honest with you. And they've not won anything of note. I think he has maybe one 20-win season, maybe two. But I think when I looked it up before the show, I think it was one 20-win season. They have not won a lot. They have not made a lot of big waves in terms of on-court performance. But they have recruited some pretty talented kids. And
Terry, another guy.
Yeah, Terry was there too. But then that was weird because Terry was saying that he had some kind of beef with the coaching staff when he left. So
yeah.
That's a whole nother ordeal. But yes, Tyler Taylor, also a guy that was there that was a very talented player as a freshman. Yeah, the Stanford thing is interesting. I mean, he's getting very good players. Now, maybe he's not getting enough. It seems like he's getting like one guy every class or so, but they're not able to put together a full team. But there's something about clearly his staff and what he's doing there to have kids invested, because I'm sure, of course, being the son of a former NBA player, and I think we've heard college coaches talk about this, that you can't really BS these kids, like these players as parents, they can kind of see through a lot of BS. So we saw him get those other kids, and besides Terry, Ingram came back, and of course Zaire Williams had nothing but good things to say about his time at Stanford, despite the fact that he actually struggled there on the court. It's something about that program that kids are really enjoying. They see that the high end kids are taking a chance on it, but they haven't seemed to be able to win. I'm curious.
And these guys talk, like if I believe Stojakovic played for the Compton Magic, but and Zaire Williams played for the Oakland Soldiers. But at the end of the day, if Stanford was putting out guys and guys were like, I hated playing for Holland, they would stop going there. But they keep going there, so I mean, like you said, there has to be a draw. I
want to state the obvious. It is Stanford, so Stanford is one of the elite universities in America.
Yes. David Shaw recruits at a high level, despite not having won anything in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, Palo Alto actually I've learned isn't really all that interesting, but I think Stanford is a really nice campus. You're in, Northern California, not too far from the Bay Area. So
where his dad played.
Yeah, his dad played in Sacramento, so he's close to where he's grown up, probably, or at least lived a portion of his life. So the familiarity there.
And his dad worked for the Kings.
Recently. So, and again, Stanford is a great school. So I don't want to sell that short. I believe I remember when listening to Zaire Williams' recruitment, I know he talked about the school really also sold him, and Zaire Williams is an extremely bright young man, and not to say that, of course, anybody who loves Stanford, but that he talked about how that really also really helped him make that decision, even though he knew he was only going to be there for 1 year. Stojakovic, I don't necessarily see as a clear one and done. He could definitely be there more than 1 year. But it's interesting that the reason why I bring up Haas is because you would think at a certain point, okay, the losing would make kids look elsewhere, despite how charismatic he may be, or despite how well they recruit, or despite even the university. That still has not happened yet. And I guess that is also why the Stanford AD and the Stanford administration has been very patient with him, because he's saying, look, I can still get us very good players. We just need one break to go our way in the Pac-12. And maybe that will come with the exit of USC and UCLA. I don't know. But that was noteworthy that he got another top recruit, despite the fact that he hasn't won anything there. It's very weird.
It almost makes you wonder if Stanford has the ability, has the upside. And I mean, you're older than me, obviously. You remember when Stanford, the days of Josh Childress.
Oh yeah, Josh Childress was there, and I watched Mark Madsen and the Collins twins and the Lopez twins. There was a time where Stanford was legit.
Mike Montgomery,
Mike Montgomery was coaching. Like, there was a time they were a number one type kind of team. They never won that championship, but they could have.
Is there a in today's version of college basketball, is there an upside for Stanford to be maybe not the West Coast Duke, but
I think there is. I think that could they be the West Coast Villanova with the right coach in the right situation? Absolutely. I think without question. Yeah. Their rival sucks. Like, Cal's not doing anything. They're dormant. They're comatose. Yeah. So your rival in the area that would also be an attractive destination, it just doesn't know what it's doing. You got SC and UCLA leaving the conference, and it's Stanford. So, and you're in California, which is right now one of the best hotbeds of high school basketball talent, up and down the coast, northern and southern California. And if you're from the West Coast, that Stanford brand, it's always going to mean something, and it's for West Coast kids. Always. It's we're from New York. We know Stanford, but it's different. If you grew up in California, Stanford means everything, no matter what part of the state you're from. So, yes, that there is a pathway there, and that might be why they're so willing to be patient with Hayes. But I do wonder, how long can it be, and why hasn't it come together? Because he's been able to get some good kids. Why hasn't he been able to kind of put together a team and a roster that could be more competent in a conference that is not in the complete dire strait it was like maybe 5 to 10 years ago? Remember when the Pac-12 was like almost like a 1 or 2 bid league? Like, it got really scary at one point. It's not there, but it still isn't the SEC or Big 12 for the ACC. Like, it still isn't that. It's right a step below there, but close. So it's curious that they haven't had any real success. But I think this recruitment is another notch in the belt for Gerard, and I'd be curious if this does buy him more time, because that, while it's a job I absolutely see someone having success, it's also not a job where you just put anybody there, clearly. Because we had a couple of guys there, and they haven't won a lot in a long time now.
I mean, Johnny Dawkins seemed like that was going to be the perfect fit, and it didn't work.
Yeah. And we did see, because Trent Johnson was before him, right? Didn't he leave? Like,
he ended up at TCU, right?
Or he went to LSU first, right? Didn't he go to LSU?
I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah, he left. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, then you ask the question, okay, well, why? Yeah, a guy who was successful, and then he just went high and dry. I know it's SEC, I know it's big money, but I mean, he was doing well at Stanford. So, is also the administration serious about putting together a real championship caliber team? They got serious with football. We saw that for that little era they had with Jim Harbaugh and the beginning of David Shaw. When will they get back to that with football? I think will be very interesting. But again, congrats to Holland. Congrats to Stojakovic. Definitely well noteworthy commitments, and we'll be curious to see how those fits land in their new destinations. But I do also want to talk about another commitment. This is not a new commitment in terms of a different school per se, but what they'll be doing for the final year of their high school year, it is very different and very new, and is a new commitment from that standpoint. So Rob Dillingham, who is one of the best point guards in the country, maybe the best point guard in the country. There was the sudden closure of Donda Academy, which we talked about a little bit earlier. he is now going to be playing his senior year or his last year of high school eligibility, so to speak, at Overtime Elite, which is very fascinating because the Overtime Elite premise has kind of been an idea where players had been foregoing eligibility and going essentially pro for a year and then going to the NBA. But that is not what's happening with Rob. He is joining Overtime Elite through a scholarship deal, which means that he can keep his eligibility and he will still remain committed to the University of Kentucky. So Dillingham, he's currently ranked 12th overall by 247 Sports. He is, again, still committed to University of Kentucky, but he is now playing with Overtime Elite. So, Kendall, do you feel like, one, how will this affect or impact Dillingham's development in this 1 year? And do you see maybe other players potentially following in his footsteps? Because this, at least as far as I can tell, or at least the conversations I've had with you and listening to others, I really didn't hear about this being a possibility or something that anybody would consider. But it is intriguing for sure.
Yeah, we're seeing a shift in Overtime Elite's business model. Frankly, to put it frank, like you said, when they had first launched, it was seen as a alternative pathway to the NBA, similar to G League Ignite, where guys would bypass college basketball and make money. I don't remember when Overtime Elite the premise was launched, but I feel like it was prior to NIL. And so at the time, guys couldn't make money playing college basketball. So it was like, yeah, I'd rather play for Overtime.
Yeah, I think Overtime Elite, if we're doing like a weird revisionist history deal, I believe Overtime Elite kind of came about, honestly, it kind of was birthed somewhat by like LeVar Ball's situation. Like LeVar Ball was trying to do something where he was paying kids to play
the JBA,
in a league. Yeah, the JBA, whatever he was calling it. And Overtime Elite, with big investors and backing, they came out and said we're going to do it too. And then Ignite came in after them and kind of like was a big announcement.
First,
yeah, they actually launched first before Overtime Elite actually got off the ground. So this is this is a very weird ecosystem, but I believe this all technically started with LeVar Ball, which is crazy in itself. But that is, I believe, how this all happened.
Yeah, and so like because of that, you have to adapt to the changing landscape. They can't really. I mean, it's a lot harder for them to compete with college basketball in the NIL landscape now if these schools are able to offer guys the same six-figure X amount of money deals that you're offering these guys to play in Overtime Elite. If the exposure isn't going to be, the exposure is far bigger in college basketball.
Yeah.
So if you decide to shift your business model and say to a Rob Dillingham, look, we know we're not going to be able to offer you more than Kentucky, can from a both monetary plus a exposure value plus just natural development and playing a more conventional route. We can't offer you all that, but what we can do is we can not pay you, a salary like we would some of these other guys that we've signed, like the Thompson twins. We're not going to pay you a salary, but what we can offer you is the ability to still make money off of your own NIL and your own likeness, and play on our platform, which the Overtime platform is going to be the biggest stage probably in all of high school basketball.
Yeah, still, absolutely.
It's bigger than any stage that you could play in, bigger than going to Oak Hill or going to Montverde or anything like that. And so you're going to make more in NIL than you would playing anywhere else, playing for us. You still get to keep your college eligibility, and then we also have these, elite facilities and all these different.
Ryan Gomes involved, like they have good coaching.
Yeah, Kevin Ollie is
Kevin Ollie
running the program. So you're gonna get elite training. You're gonna get college level, G League level training prior to going to Kentucky, and then you get to go to Kentucky, and it's a win-win for everybody. So it's an adjustment to the business model, and the icing on the cake for Rob Dillingham was that week before the whole Donda closure. He had, Overtime Elite had their big, season opening showcase, and his Donda
had 36.
Team, played against an Overtime Elite team, and he went off. He put on a show.
Yeah.
And really, a lot of people didn't know who Rob Dillingham was before that, because again, you're playing on that stage. You're playing in front of, some of the top rappers and YouTube celebrities and whatever you want to call them sitting courtside, and he's going off. And now Rob Dillingham becomes a household name in this grassroots circle. So he saw what the Overtime brand can do for him, and he decided to make the jump. Should Kentucky fans be concerned? Decides, I'm not going to play college basketball. I mean, he signed.
Yes. Yeah. Should they be concerned? Yeah, I think that they should be wary of this. I mean, concern is a certain word. I don't know if I'd be panicking. I think the fact that he made this deal but made it clear that I'm keeping my eligibility so I can play at Kentucky would make me feel good. Being
like Shaden Sharp.
Right, yeah. Yes, to be fair. Now him being around all that money and all the influence that comes with being part of Overtime Elite, that would probably concern me a little bit, because all it takes is for you to say, never mind, I'm going to take this bread for one more year and then go to the NBA. But I think that the fact that he, even from this standpoint, is saying, nah, I'm going to keep my eligibility, because he's still costing himself money. I mean, he's costing himself money that he could be using to just put in his own pocket by doing this. So
yeah, if he didn't plan on playing,
so it's like, so to me, it'd be like, I mean, you might as well just play it. I mean, so someone would argue, look, get the money whenever you can. But I would argue, look, if you've already gone this far to say you're going to play essentially not for free because you're getting a scholarship or whatever, but if you're going to do it for free here, you might as well just go to Kentucky next year and just get your NIL bread. But I would say this. I think if I was Kentucky, I'd feel better about him coming into next season being a better player. Like, I think that this is a very interesting thing here. Like, I feel like in some ways this almost feels like the happy medium that I think any elite basketball player and like people who follow these elite basketball players would probably want, honestly, is the ability for kids who decided, like, look, basketball is my future. I don't need to go to like a conventional high school per se. I will still go to school and like do what I need to do, get my grades or whatever. But like I need to be training at a basketball type place. And essentially some of these high schools have tried to essentially become that.
These academies.
Yeah, these weird academies and stuff. But like to me, like this is almost better than that. It's like he does his normal schooling, I guess. I don't know. I didn't read into exactly how the scholarship schooling thing will work. But essentially he's just training and just working on his game. And he's part of this group. And then now I think he's going to come into next year playing at Kentucky. I think he's going to be a beast. I mean, he's already a really talented player. But I think for his development, this is the best case scenario. And he gets to do
better
it.
Than Donda?
You're lucky I didn't start. I was on the fence about whether or not, because this is the first time we're doing a YouTube video since we figured out the digital soundboard situation. So we have a whole thing of sound effects that I now have and could potentially use. But I was like, I'm not going to do it today. Like, I'll figure out how to connect it next time we record. And now I'm wishing I had my laugh track, because that was really funny. No, not Donda. No, this will be a much better experience than Donda Academy. Sorry, Jaylen Brown. I know you think Donda Academy is the
gold standard.
Yeah, is the school of Wakanda for young men and women. But no, I think that this will be a better situation for Rob. And I do think that this could open up the avenue for a lot of kids to do this, because we've already seen kids like just have no affiliation or no care for like their high school. And I don't say that negatively. It's just they'll go wherever. They'll go to one school, quit another school. They'll just go to these weird schools that only have like 30 people but have a great basketball team. Oddly, they'll do that. Like, so they have no allegiance. Like, and they shouldn't. Like, I don't care. It's high school. You can do whatever you want. So that this is now an option that you can just go to a place and just hoop essentially, and then do whatever schooling you do to make sure you get your requirements so you can be eligible to play college basketball. For those who maybe, and then also there may be people who have parents and things where they don't want them just going and saying, I'm just going to play overtime league just to get a bag. Some of these parents may want their kids to go to college. Like, that is a thing, too. So this seems like a really good, happy medium for everybody. So I expect other people to do this.
Now, I have a quick question for you about Kentucky real quick.
Yeah.
For all the Kentucky fans who might be listening.
Shout out to Big Blue Nation. We love y'all. Y'all
class,
y'all listen to us a lot, so we appreciate y'all.
It's coming together. It's almost without a doubt going to be the number one recruiting class in the country.
Yeah.
They've already got the commitment of Dillingham. They got Justin Edwards, Northeast kid. They got
Duke fans will have something to say about that, though.
Duke's in the conversation, but Kentucky's not done. It does not seem. So they did get Aaron Bradshaw, who's a 5-star center, I believe. I want to say On 3 might have him as number one player in the country. One of these places put him at number one recently. But they do. I mean, there's one more player that they want to complete their Voltron recruiting class, and it's DJ Wagner, who is not committed. When the last time we did our podcast, he seemed like he was a lock to go to Louisville. His grandfather is on the staff. Yeah. Kenny Payne is the head coach. That seemed like that was a done deal. Since then, John Calipari has pulled out all the stops, whatever mafia card he needed to pull out. And, now DeJuan Wagner is going to DJ Wagner high school games wearing Kentucky shirts. So, I mean, if we want to know where DJ Wagner is going, it's not. And then he signed an NIL deal with Nike. So that was the icing on the cake for that whole deal. But what do you make of a DJ Wagner Dillingham combination? They also have Reed Shepard, who I left.
Yeah, that's what you were missing. Yeah, Reed Shepard, man, that kid is nasty too.
Yeah. So, Kentucky native son.
Yeah.
Obviously one of fan favorite. How does this all? I mean, it's similar to the conversation we had about Memphis, just at a higher level. But how do you make all of that work if you're John Calipari?
Well, I mean, to me, I feel way more comfortable if I was Kentucky in terms of thinking Calipari can make it work than Penny Hardaway, because I've seen Calipari do it. Calipari may not have as many titles as Kentucky fans would like, but he's got a lot. He's got Final Fours. He's got deep tournament runs. He's got SEC championships, and he does have one national title.
This is the best.
And this is essentially how he did it. He did it with these mega classes, and we have not seen him put together these mega classes. And we've done these podcasts where I've said, I mean, is that era just dead? Like, are we never going to see that era of Kentucky basketball again? And I don't think that's the case, clearly, because now we have essentially 2 in a row. He has one this year. He will have one next year. And what I think has happened, Kendall, is it's almost like, how do I describe this? It's almost like, it's a very weird analogy. I pause to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's almost like when, you're with, a significant other or whatever, and you don't realize how good you got it. And they say, all right, well, go out there and find something else and see what you like out there. And I guess, maybe I'll be here waiting for you. Maybe I won't. And then you go out there and you realize, oh, man, the streets is not for me. I need to go back to my good situation. I kind of feel like that's what high school basketball recruiting is doing to John Calipari. There was an era where clearly high school basketball recruits all considered Kentucky to be the best place to be, because that's where all the best kids were going. And then there was this era where kids were going to Gonzaga, kids were going to Baylor, kids were going to Duke. Kids, they kind of just started just going all other places. They were no longer these massive team ups to all go to Kentucky. There are some team ups to go to Duke, but that the massive team ups thing kind of ended. It seemed like kids were just kind of going wherever, and it was like, all right, go to those places and see if you go have the success and happiness that you have, and you'll win championships. Let's see what happens. Go to Texas, under Shaka Smart. Go to those places and let's see what happens. And not many of those guys have rings. Not many of those guys have championships. Not many of those guys have maybe the prestige or maybe even the draft standing that they would have had if they would have played under Calipari, considering where his guys typically get drafted. And I think maybe, I don't know, Cal could be going to these living rooms now, Going and saying, hey, you think about all these other schools? Okay, here's what this guy did when he went to that school. Second round pick. Here's what this guy did when he went to that school. They didn't get to the tournament. Here's what this guy did when he went to that school. He was a number 1 pick type of guy. Now he's number 20. Like, and you can go on and on about these guys that chose other schools and just didn't really do much on the college basketball level, and it may have hurt their NBA standing. And Cal could go back and say, okay, I have guys who went here when it wasn't all that sweet, and they still had a pretty good draft standing, and they still are having good NBA careers. And that could be what's happening. I don't know. Also the sneaker thing is also, an open secret about, I feel like a lot of these sneaker companies decide which players they want to start sending to certain schools. And for whatever reason, Nike just didn't seem to be supporting Calipari the way they normally do. At least that's how I saw it. Yeah. And that has changed. That has clearly changed. I have no idea why. But I think either of those things, or perhaps a combination of those two things, could be what's happening. And I think if you're a Kentucky fan, I think you should be very excited. This is not something to be concerned about. Like, this is how you guys win championships, or have won a championship before. This is his only chance. He ain't gonna win it with a bunch of top 40 type 50 type guys. He ain't that good a coach. He ain't coaching them guys up like that. He ain't he can coach them to Sweet 16s and SEC championships. You're never gonna win that championship like that. He needs these bomb squad, dream team type of commitments, and it looks like he's getting them now. So I'd be excited if I was a Big Blue fan.
A Dillingham Wagner backcourt. That might be the first time in the recruiting rankings era that the top 2 point guards in the class went to the same team. I don't know if I've ever seen it. We've had top point guard, top
what was Bledsoe ranked when he joined Wall?
It's a good one. That's a good one.
He was very high. I don't know if he was 2.
He wasn't 2. But yeah,
he was top 5, I think. Yeah, he was top 5. I remember that was like, because when Wall signed there, everybody was like, "Yo, Eric Bledsoe there," and he just signed to play with John Wall. Like, what the hell? Yeah. And John Wall, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna play him together." And
yeah, I remember Josh Pastner at Memphis was trying to get Bledsoe himself just to be the guy at Memphis, and he couldn't because they already had they had him committed with John Wall.
Yeah. So that's a good question. A lot of these point guards, they want to have the ball in their hands. They want to be the guy. So I would be surprised if there were a lot of other instances of that.
Is this the best backcourt that Calipari has had?
It's a weird. The Monk and Fox backcourt, especially with how they played on the court, those guys were killers, man. Yeah, like they didn't go as far in the tournament as they probably. I don't even say they should have, because they didn't have a good front court. But as a backcourt, and he's got teams that have gone further, but as a backcourt,
Eric Bledsoe on Rivals.com was number 3.
Yeah, I remember it. Bledsoe
he was the number 23 player in the country, but he was number 3 point guard.
Yeah, I feel like I remember Bledsoe being really high. Like I said, I don't know if he was 2. Who was 2 that year? I'm curious.
Yeah, I know. I'm about to check now.
Why don't you check? But yeah, no, I really.
Man, remember this name?
Okay.
Abdul Gaddy.
Abdul Gaddy. Oh, Jesus. Well,
he did not pan out.
No, he did not pan out. Shout out to Abdul Gaddy, though. Hopefully he's all well and he's living a very fulfilling life. But yeah, man.
What a throwback.
Yeah, that's a name right there, and what a throwback there. But yeah, so. And Cal, he could absolutely be pitching this to Wagner as well, and Dillingham, saying, "I've done this. No one else has ever done this." No. Well, you getting the number 1, number 2 type kind of point guards in the country and making it work. So, yeah, if I'm a Kentucky fan, I'd be extremely excited for where things are headed. And now you just gotta hope you keep Dillingham. You gotta hope that.
Remember, he tried to get Xavier Henry in that class as well.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
that's the top shooting guard.
Yeah, I remember that as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting situation over at Kentucky. I think that the Dillingham thing with overtime leads is something to watch, especially with the Wagner commitment. You wonder if this is Dillingham's potential way of saying, "Oh, you wanna flirt with Wagner? Okay, well, I'll go flirt with overtime elite." Hopefully, if you're a Kentucky fan, if you're Calipari, you're on the same page, saying, "Hey, you guys are going to be a great tandem together." That would be the one thing to think about. But the last thing we're going to get to today before we get out of here, Shout out to Kendall already. This has been a really fun episode of Uncommitted. I'm really happy to be back doing this. Arguably the country's most interesting recruitment is the pursuit of 2023 Sierra Canyon senior Bronny James. There have been some questions about whether the son of Lakers star LeBron James will choose to play college basketball at all. But he has garnered offers from the likes of Memphis, USC, and Ohio State, who hosted the James family on an official visit in September, them being Ohio State. So, Kendall, if you were advising Bronny James, where do you think the best fit would be given the teams that he's looking at, or perhaps these pro options that he also may be considering as well?
Yeah, the other one that's in the that's been thrown out there is Oregon, given the Nike, whatever you want to call it, with the Nike connection and what you just mentioned in the last segment about Nike potentially funneling guys, well, not potentially, Nike actually funneling guys to certain schools. I mean, in this case, that's not going to happen. They don't have any stake in the game in terms of telling Bronny. They can't tell Bronny where he's going to go, but obviously it's in LeBron's best interest and Bronny's best interest to go to certain schools based off of that. But man, I mean, we've talked about this recruitment before, but we haven't had a whole lot to talk about since he's played and been on this stage in high school basketball, because they don't talk about anything.
No.
We don't know really anything about his recruitment other than he took a visit to Ohio State. But
and we only know that because he took pictures.
Yeah, because
in Ohio State jersey. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was on the sideline of the game.
Yeah.
The Ohio State Notre Dame game. So we really don't know much about Bronny's recruitment from public circles. So you have to go off of just vibes and theories and guesses and speculation.
And that always works out well, right? Going off vibes and speculation.
100%. But I mean, look, obviously it goes without saying he's going to go to a Nike school. Like I mentioned, he also, along with DJ Wagner, was a part of Nike's first NIL class, and I think the assumption is that, and the reality of all the schools that we've mentioned are all Nike schools. It feels like the Ohio State visit was all that was just they wanted to go to the game. Ohio State's in the mix, but
you really think Bronny James wanted a free weekend in Columbus? He could afford that. His dad got it.
That's the thing. Yeah.
They wanted to be on the sidelines of Ohio State Notre Dame. I feel like they could have found a way that didn't involve official visit. You would think.
Oh yeah, that's very true. But it's like, if they go to the game and he doesn't go on the visit, that's almost like even worse, right? It's like you don't even look at the school. I suppose. If you're gonna be here, you might as well go to a practice. You might as well put the jersey on, see what it looks like. But man, I mean, Oregon and Memphis feel like the two that make the most sense. Given the way the two places are, and mind you, I would definitely choose college basketball. It sounds like that's
I would too.
Yeah. This summer he's proven himself to be a lot better of a player than I think people thought he'd be.
Yeah, he's a really good player, no question.
Yes, he's a real prospect. I mean, he can really shoot the basketball.
Yeah, he's an excellent shooter.
He plays the game the right way. He's not flashy from any respect, but he's also a really good athlete for his size, which should be a surprise. But no, I mean, he's a real recruit that if somebody got him, he's gonna help your team. So, I mean, but I also feel like he shouldn't go into a situation where people are expecting him to be this like mega one and done superstar guy, and that's going to be the pressure that's on you if you go to the G League or you go to an overtime. And also, LeBron's not going to put his kid in overtime elite
No.
Unless he's invested in, unless he's got his own investment in overtime.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, honestly, it's got to be a place where LeBron feels like he's got his own investment in it, which is why Ohio State makes sense. Which is why Oregon makes sense, and the Memphis connection. LeBron is obviously a big fan of Penny Hardaway. He said that on multiple occasions. We know Penny is not afraid to recruit these types of guys. And Penny is he's the only head coach in college basketball with a Nike shoe. He's the biggest Nike guy there is in college basketball. And and he's an NBA guy. He plays a similar brand to LeBron. You could definitely see LeBron, the way LeBron operates, you could definitely see LeBron saying to himself, yeah, that'd be an awesome place for Bronny to play. So, and then once you get Mikey Williams, now it creates, and then Ashton Hardaway, who's also playing at Sierra Canyon, it creates a comfortable environment for Bronny to go there and be like, look, I played with Mikey back in the day. I played with Ashton Hardaway this past season. He was also an NBA player's kid. It'll be interesting to see where it plays out, but we're now at the stage where he should be able to be recruited by anybody. Besides Duke and Kentucky, who have their own guys, any other school in the country would probably want this guy.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think that college basketball is his best route. I think that he's a very good player. I would be a little concerned putting him in an environment with grown men, pros, guys who are trying to scratch and claw to get their way to the NBA. I'm not at all suggesting that he's not a good player who can handle it, but that's a lot to send the son of LeBron James into the G League to me. Like I don't think I'd want him in that environment. I don't think that would make a lot of sense.
Jalen Green had his struggles, and Jalen Green is a super talent.
Yeah, was a
mega talent.
Yeah, he was a supernova when it comes to high school basketball.
Jaden Hardy, mega talent.
Right, another supernova.
And struggle even more.
Yeah, and so that just isn't an environment that I think would be suitable for Bronny James at all. I think that college makes sense. I pause about Memphis because of, and to be honest, I'm a little surprised that Memphis is this high on Bronny's list. I know a lot of people aren't. I know you aren't, but I am. I go back to this state of constant chaos around Penny Hardaway that would make me, if I was LeBron James, think, do I want to send my kid into that? I would not. I answer your question. I would not do it. That's surprising to me that he would consider Memphis so high. Also, when I think of Memphis, and I'm thinking of Bronny, and we know Bronny wants to be an NBA player, and like most of these kids, but he's extremely serious about it. He has a lot of the resources to help him because he's LeBron James, and LeBron wants Bronny to be an NBA player because he wants to play alongside him. I would want to go to the place where I can get the best coaching possible too. There's an aspect of that as well that would make the Memphis situation a little weird to me because I know there are guys who have gone to the NBA since playing with Penny Hardaway, but as someone who has watched Memphis play basketball, they have not been the best coach team. I'm just being honest. Yeah. They're not.
Especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Right. So, and we're not talking about a kid who's an automatic one and done. Again, if it was Duren or if it was Precious Achiuwa or if it was Wiseman, that's a little different. You could probably take a little bit more of a risk. I don't know if I'm taking a risk with a top 50 guy saying I need to get him to the NBA as quick as possible, preferably one and done, and I'm sending him to Memphis. I just don't. I don't see it. Yeah. I don't think that makes much sense.
I think of all the schools on his list, I would feel like Oregon would be the one that.
Yeah, Oregon. Yeah, Oregon would probably be. Yeah, Oregon would be safe from that standpoint. Dana Altman is an excellent coach. They have sent guys to the NBA.
It's just the LeBron. Look, now LeBron has played for coaches before that he didn't. We know.
He might not. He might not value the head coach that much. You're right. He's coached. He's played for all types of guys,
guys
you know,
that,
right?
Like, you would think like aren't LeBron guys,
Right? Yeah,
Eric Spoelstra, like
yeah.
So he may say to himself, "Look, I know Dana Altman is a nobody in my head, but I don't care." You know, as long as, I mean, they've got Mookie committed.
And that's a good point you think about from that. But I think about it from the other standpoint of this. He might just not think that the coach matters that much. Like he just might to him he might also think that like Dana Altman, who's Dana Altman, but like.
Right.
I'm thinking of it from the standpoint of like he just may not think it matters. He's like, I've won with David Blatt, I've won with Mike Brown. Like it just doesn't matter who the head coach is.
Yeah.
Like as long as you got game and you know how to play the game, like it'll be fine. I think I would be surprised if he took that route, but I wouldn't be shocked because of his career. I think that would not be a smart way to look at this because Bronny is not LeBron. He's just not. There's no one like LeBron in terms of high school talents coming into playing in the NBA.
I forgot who it was. I want to say maybe Jonathan Gavoni or somebody. Somebody was talking about Bronny recently, and they said that the coaches that have, or maybe it was an article. Maybe it might have been Adam Finkelstein even. I don't remember who it was, but they were talking about like the coaches that have dealt with LeBron. From a recruiting standpoint, have said that LeBron has been realistic about Bronny. That he's not like LeBron can sometimes be unrealistic. He's unrealistic about the fact that like, I'm gonna, my son's gonna be a first round pick and we're gonna play and all that. And people didn't necessarily believe him, but that behind closed doors, he understands that his son's not gonna come in and average 25 points a game in college basketball. And that,
right?
And we know LeBron to be a pretty smart basketball mind, so. It seems as if he does understand what he's going into.
Which does then make it interesting why the public face is so different.
Bullish, yeah. I mean, but we also know LeBron's the master
marketer. But again, you almost right, but you almost wonder, is that to a detriment? Like, at what point? Because I took it that he believed that this is what Bronny would be able to do, and to his credit, I feel like. Every year, Bronny exceeds expectations. What you expect of him as a player.
I think he does think that his son will be one and done, and I think that is the expectation. It's more so, again, just does him saying that mean that he thinks that his son should be getting 20 shots a game, or his son's gonna come in and be the guy. It seems like coaches haven't.
Yeah, like he don't expect his son to come in there acting like Trae Young in year one of that Oklahoma.
Yeah, exactly. And if he's not, then he's gonna be. Going to every practice and, calling up the coach after every game, being like, we gotta walk through what happened tonight,
Yeah.
But and so that is interesting. But I again, if the coach does matter, then of all the coaches, obviously Penny Hardaway is the one. Because again, as much as you're right that LeBron will see. From a distance, he'll see the Imani-based thing not work and be a little concerned, and he'll see, Jalen Duren was a lottery pick, but he, could have been the number one pick in the draft in another circumstance. Like, but he also isn't so locked in that he sees, I watched that Memphis versus St. Louis game where, their offense looked a little shaky,
Yeah.
I mean, he, the only Memphis game he might have saw was the Gonzaga game where they looked very good,
I mean, yeah.
And so that'll wind up being the thing is, can they just sell him on, look, I'm Penny Hardaway. I'm the only guy in this group of teams that has an NBA pedigree. I sent guys to the NBA, sent just as many guys to the NBA Dana Altman has. Like, that'll be the question. And then again, Nike, it's in their best interest for him, the guy, to go to Oregon or Memphis, you would think. So I mean, man, it'll be fascinating. Do you think he's gonna make the McDonald's game?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Who is Nike? Is Nike the sponsor of the McDonald's game?
It's actually an Adidas game. So
no. I won't say no. I would say that it's a lot less likely. No, he won't decline. I think it's a lot less likely he'll make it if it's a Adidas sponsored game.
That's wild.
I mean, you're talking about the top 24 players.
But I've never seen the McDonald's game where it's like, LeBron played in it. however many years ago.
I mean, that's true. Ago. I mean, I'm sure that and they care about that. But I'm just saying.
And wouldn't it be the 20th anniversary when LeBron played in it?
Oh wow. He played it in. Yeah, it would be 2023. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess it might have been it was the 03.
Yeah, he was drafted in 20. Yeah, so it was the year he was drafted. So yeah, it would be. That's kind of crazy. That was very good math that you put on top of your head that quickly. Yeah, I mean, look, you're technically supposed to be getting close to the top 24 players.
ESPN would try to get him in. If anything.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm being naive. I just feel like if you're talking about the top 23 players, 24 players, and Bronny is around 50, have we seen guys like around there get in? Yes. Not a lot of them. It's not like something that happens a lot. Like that would be a stretch to put him in. Doesn't mean he won't be in, but if it was Nike, I'd say yes, he'd be in no matter what. That's honestly how I'd feel. If it was Nike, I'd say yeah, he'll be in there. An Adidas game, they have no reason to help LeBron James. So yes. I could see more politics. I could see more politics coming in to the picture for something like that. But I think that's a good question. I don't know.
I would be surprised if he doesn't.
Okay.
And I also would be surprised. I think he's going to have a big senior year, and I think
I think he will too.
The hype and because you're not playing. They're going to play tough teams. They're going to play showcase games and whatnot. But when they play those, the Harvard Westlakes and the Modern Days and the regular schools out in California, I think he's going to have a big year and the hype and all that. And California is one of the few places where high school basketball is still kind of normal,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he's not playing, for a prep school. He's playing for a real high school. So
yeah. I miss those days, man.
That'll matter. Yeah. Nowadays, the McDonald's game is, it's 24 guys comprised of 8 schools.
Yeah. It's tough.
8 different high schools.
Yeah, there was a time where, growing up where you were and playing for your neighborhood team, or even if it wasn't your neighborhood team, but at least in your city. Sometimes you had guys go someplace nowhere near where they live, but at least it was your city. Like, it mattered a little bit. Like, now it's just guys just play just wherever. And, again, no disrespect to the kids. They
guys
go and get the best development possibility you can get. And a lot of times it is these academies and these places that are geared towards making you successful, not these random schools that are just trying to get these kids to graduate high school, or go to a college, not necessarily on an athletic standpoint. So I get it from their standpoint. I think from just as a former high school player myself, and just like from a hooper standpoint of thinking about what high school basketball used to be, I do miss that part. But I think that's a good place to wrap this show, though. So I want to thank Kendall for joining me on episode 12 of the Uncommitted podcast. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, you can catch all of our shows on the New Generation Podcast Network from an audio standpoint. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Of course, this is the one podcast that that we do also visually on YouTube, so you can catch all our episodes of the Uncommitted podcast on YouTube as well as all of our other content, basketball and hero related, all on the YouTube channel, New Generation Media. Make sure you give us a subscription, and make sure you like this video and give us a comment on what you thought about some of the stuff we talked about today. We talked about Bronny James, we talked about the rise of Penny Hardaway, or the resurgence of Penny Hardaway on the recruiting stage. Rob Dillingham going to overtime elite. What are your thoughts on these topics? Make sure you give us a comment in the comment section. People who do it, they know how active we are in there, so we'll definitely respond and talk to you guys in there. So look forward to talking to you guys in the comment section. And, of course, follow us individually and as a group on social media. You can follow us on Twitter, New Generation Podcast, Twitter, New Generation Pod, Instagram, New Generation Podcast, and Facebook as well. You can find us, New Generation Media, and follow us individually on social media. You can find me on Twitter, EJ_Stewart, Instagram and TikTok, Action EJ. Kendall can be found on Twitter. He is at New Gen Ken. That's going to do it for now. Thank you guys so much for checking us out again on this episode of The Uncommitted. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.